Hellblazer podcast.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome back. Before we get into the episode, just want to let you know that this is the free version of the podcast, and all that means is that we are way behind where I'm at in Patreon. So if you are loving this podcast and you need more John Constantine in your life, definitely go check us out at patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books and sign up for the Hellblazer tier, where you'll get access to the entire Hellblazer library that I've recorded so far. And also you'll get access to the exclusive episodes of the Planes, Trains, and Comic Books main podcast. So if any of that sounds good to you, definitely go over to patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books, all one word, and sign up there. And with that out of the way, let's get into the issue. Today we are reading Hellblazer number 26. And just a little catch up on what was going on last time. John has taken a break from London, I guess, and he went to visit a friend in a town named Thursdyke, and that town has a new missile silo that has opened that has kind of revitalized the town. The people really needed it there, and it was kind of very important for the jobs and everything of the townsfolk. But it's causing a lot of protests and stuff to happen because it's a nuclear missile site, so that's bad. And so John is there just visiting a friend, but all this is going on. And also at the same time, the town, because of the new revitalization, they're having like a pagan festival that hasn't happened for a while. Like, you know, however many years it's been since the town hasn't really celebrated because they've been so poor. But now they have a bunch of money, or at least they're more prosperous. So they're like, let's do this like Halloween type of celebration where we all put on masks. So they did that. And then at the same time, there's two scientists inside of the missile silo where one of them is like evil. They're saying they're testing some kind of device on the people that like puts out a frequency and makes them basically lose all control and like give in to their deepest desires, it says. So one of the scientists pushed the button on that machine. It unleashes these frequency waves, and everybody in the town has begun to go crazy. It's almost like whatever they were dressed as, like whatever their masks are, is what they're becoming. And we left off with all the townspeople beginning to commit all these different crimes of, you know, horribleness. Very, very horrible. I even had to put like a warning on the last one because it was so horrible. This one doesn't have nearly as much of that stuff. So if you were disturbed by the last one, don't worry, this one's not as bad. So first things first, we got the cover here. We can see the head of one of the scientists is gigantic on the back of the page in the background. It is looking down evilly on top of Constantine and a bunch of other people who are burning in flames, and the scientist has like his hands pursed together like Mr. Burns saying excellent. So and this one, just like the last one, is written by Grant Morrison with art by David Lloyd. And we start off with the priest in this one. If you remember in the last issue, the window exploded in his church as he was looking at it and praying, and when it did, he like went crazy and opened the doors to his church and went outside. Now, there was a bunch of protesters outside, and we didn't see what they were doing after that, but apparently they have gone crazy from the frequency waves. So, the priest, who's named Parson Bayless, I guess parson is another word for priest. I'd never heard of that word before. But he gets taken up by these protesters who are also crazy, and they draw on his face like a bullseye, and then they somehow fashion out of his priest hat, like the big, I don't know, it looks like a Catholic hat, but then they form it into the shape of a bomb. So he's got like a big bomb on his face, and he says he is now called Archbishop Bomb, and he's got like around his neck, it looks like where a cross would be hanging. It's got the shape of an airplane. I don't know where they got all this stuff, but apparently they were able to craft some of these materials in order to make him look like a crazy Archbishop of the Bomb. And then now that he has, I guess, become this Archbishop, he is now leading his people, like his church, I guess we'll say, to the home of the bomb. So they're going to the missile silo, And this thing must be pretty close by because they just all walk there pretty quickly. And we see there's a sign that says Thursday Moore Tactical Missile Wing. There's a barbed wire fence, and he is telling his people, let nothing stand in our way. Beyond lies the city of God, the celestial city. They cannot deny us entry. Tear down the walls. And so all of his followers begin to climb the barbed wire fence and kind of overload the weight limit of the fence, I think is what's going on, because they just all jump on it and begin to crawl. And as they do, there's just too much people and too much weight on it, and it kind of collapses. Then we cut to some guards that are inside, and one of them is kind of freaking out, like, what's going on, Keller? You got to do something. You hear that alarm? There's someone that's getting through the fence. We got to do something. So he somehow doesn't seem affected by any of these waves or whatever. But his buddy Keller is, because he's saying that siren is the last sound we'll ever hear. It's Gabriel's trumpet calling down Judgment Day. And as he's saying this, we're seeing his buddy Keller put a gun in it, or a rifle in his mouth, just like Full Metal Jacket style. And he kills himself, like right in front of that dude. And that guy's name was Chambers. So Chambers hears the mob coming, and he's like, oh my God, it's coming. Don't leave me, Keller. It's coming. And then we cut back to Parson Bayless, who is now climbing over the backs of the people who are probably all cut up on barbed wire and everything, as the fence has collapsed underneath their weight. And we see the name of this issue is called How I Learned to Love the Bomb. And then we cut back to town where, like I said last time, everybody is going crazy. People are murdering people, raping people. Their masks are on. They look super creepy. And in the midst of this mayhem, we see someone looking out from an alleyway who is hiding, obviously. And we see that person is John's friend Una, who's the person he came to visit in this town specifically. So she's just looking and seeing all these things happen and is saying, oh God, make it stop. Make it stop. And then she looks, and there's like a crowd of people walking, like a parade of people. And they're not like murdering or anything at the moment, but maybe they're moving on and trying to find more people to murder, because they've definitely killed a lot of people that are in this town right now. So as she's looking, she sees the leader of this mob, someone with a torch who's walking, has a really big, ugly, mask on their face. And she realizes, she's like, oh no, it's John. And then we see that, yes, John Constantine himself has been possessed by this frequency and is leading this mob. And he's saying, follow me. Mommy knows best. Mommy knows best. In your hearts, you know it. You know it's right. Follow me. Follow me too. And then as he's saying that, she yells out, John, and then runs from the alleyway. And to me, this seemed pretty lucky that she made it all the way to John without anybody attacking her, because like I said, these people are murdering and raping and everything. So it seems kind of lucky that she didn't get any of those things. But she is able to take off his mask. And when she does, he has like a blank look on his face. But then she's yelling, John Constantine, you are John Constantine. And then we understand why she wasn't possessed, because they showed this kind of quickly in the art. They didn't really make a big deal about it. But when she was in the alley, she had a set of like Walkman headphones on. So she was listening to music, and a frequency is something audible. So if you are listening to music too loud, it like cancels out the frequency, or maybe certain types of music cancel out that frequency. So she was listening to music. Everybody went crazy around her. And I guess she realized that that's what was protecting her, because she goes up to John, and as she takes the mask off and tells him, you're John Constantine, she puts her headphones on his head, and he wakes up. And as he's kind of coming out of his stupor, she takes the head of the mommy, I guess, I thought it was like an ugly man, but apparently it's just an ugly woman. And she throws that head of the mommy into the water. And all the people that were following John before, they don't like freak out that there's two people that aren't, part of their group anymore. They follow mommy into the water. So I don't know if they drown or anything, but they just followed into the water, and that's the last we see of them. And then we cut back to the missile base where that guard Chambers, whose friend blew his head off a second ago, is yelling, "Stay back! This is my last warning, stay back!" And he's pointing a gun at the Archbishop Baum, who is walking menacingly towards the guard. And Chambers, the guard, is like, "Stay back or I'll shoot, I will!" And he does. He pulls the trigger, shoots the Archbishop, and the guy goes down. And then he's like, "Oh no, I didn't mean to. Don't hurt me," as his followers kind of rush the guard. And it looks like they begin to just tear that guard apart. Even though, like a second later, the Archbishop rises up and says, Don't be afraid for me. I am all light within. I cannot die. See, I rise again," as he stands up and puts his hat back on. Then we cut to the interior of the base where there are two scientists. One of them is Professor Horribin, and he is the man who pushed the button to release the frequency and test it on the people. And then there's a scientist, we don't really get his name. I think we got it in the last issue, but they don't say it again in this one, who is like, what did you do? Like, I can't believe it. So he's saying, "Professor Horribin, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. What have you done? Professor!" And the professor is just staring at his screen, his little box that was in the last issue showing just like a frequency wave, but he's just staring at it. And he says, "A giant sleeps in all of us, a buried king." The Bible asks, "Can you loosen the belt of Orion? This I have done. I have unchained Prometheus, woken the god within. You people from the ministry, you don't understand anything. We must make cuts, you say. Take away his funding." And it's like he's kind of saying that to himself because he's not even acknowledging the other scientist is there. And the other scientist is just saying, "What? Are you sure you're feeling all right, Professor? I mean, well, this machine of yours, what exactly does it do? You said it uses microwaves to..." And then he like goes around the back of the machine and looks into the back of it. And I guess this doesn't make any sense to me, but apparently no one ever walked around to the back of this machine. Now, I should say this machine is not against a wall. It's just sitting in the middle of a room. So depending on whatever angle you walked up to it as, you would totally notice this. But apparently the back of it is just off. And there's nothing inside of the screen. So the screen is lit up and it is showing something on the front of it as Professor Horribin is looking, and everybody else can see that too. But when the other scientist goes around to the back of it and looks, he's like, "But there's nothing here. It's hollow inside." And then Professor Horribin says, "A mask. No more. You took away my funding." And then we see that he's approaching the other scientist guy that's looking at the back of this machine with a hammer in his hand, and we see the scientist that is behind the machine saying, "Oh Jesus, Horribin, for God's sake, now don't be stupid, don't." And then we see the hammer rise and fall, and blood spattering all over the place as Horribin begins to beat the other scientist with the hammer. And Horribin yells out, "How dare you call me stupid?" as he continually beats the other scientist with a hammer in the head. And after the bloodshed is done, Horribin sits back down in his chair and says calmly, "We must make cuts. Bone Shard, tear open my wrists for you. I gave you everything. Cuts." And I just got to say, this super weird way of talking, he just like throws in single words as he's saying things. So like you saw, he just says "Bone Shard," period. And then a full sentence, and then it'll be like "cuts." So I just wanted you to know, he talks weird. It's not the way I'm reading it. So as Professor Horribin is sitting in his chair, he begins to concentrate, and it seems like he can reach out with his mind and see what all the townsfolk are doing. So he's like going through all these different scenes of what's happening, and I'll read what the narration says. That's kind of like what he's seeing. It says, "Mr. Finn, the fishmonger, is pulling the wings off birds in the pet shop. Canaries, parrots, cockatiels. When he has had enough, when he has divined the secret of flight, he will jump from the roof of the town hall. In Cromwell Street, the children are led smiling to the razor man, who gently removes their faces to make child masks for the adults. The children depart with wet red Halloween cake faces, smiling still.
And all the sounds of pain, of the glass crushed underfoot, become one great sound, like the drown-out final chime of some monumental bell signaling doomsday, and the hollow town hums like a hive. And then a woman yells out as she's all bloody, and I don't know if she's one of the people being attacked or one of the crazies, but she says, "The devil has come to Thursdyke." And then we cut back to John and Una, who are now inside of a club, or as they say in Europe, a discotheque. And I guess music is playing in there. So there are some people that have been hiding in there with Una. I don't know if she saved them or if in general just the people were there. But I think there's some children. So it seems like maybe some other people picked up on it, or Una told everybody that she saw that was still alive that, hey, if you're in this place where the music is playing, it will block the frequency that is driving everybody crazy. So John and Una are talking in here, and John is like, "Oh God, oh Christ, I can't believe it. An amateur. It took me like a bloody amateur." So he's just mad that that he got so easily corrupted by the sound or whatever, because, you know, it's some kind of magic, and he's supposed to be some badass magician. So once again, Constantine is not as cool or badass as he thought. And he asks Una where they're at right now, because I guess he's kind of like wondering, why are we inside of a disco? This is a very weird place. But she explains what I already told you, which is that certain musics block out the noise, and that the reason why she didn't get mind controlled or whatever is because she was listening to her Walkman with Sonic Youth on it. And then Constantine kind of throws out his idea about what this thing is. He says, "This thing, it unlocks doors in the head, letting all the repressed stuff come up, all those masks. It's causing eruptions from the unconscious, the dark side bubbling to the surface and taking over. I wanted to lead people, to show them my way was the best way. Christ almighty." And then Una says that she has not been taking her pills that she takes to not have like psychic visions anymore. And so she says, "I feel a bit weird. I keep hearing it. All of it. Do you believe a town can commit suicide? That's what's happening, John. The town can't take anymore. Years of failure and neglect. It's destroying itself. There are voices in the soil. 3 stars. The god of death. The angel of annihilation. Oh, John, I can hear its wings. The town has called upon the god of death. And John, there's worse. Parson Bayless and the CDN protesters, they've gone to the airbase." And that clicks for John. He's like, "Oh, Christ, the missiles. That's how it must work on them. It's bringing out their hidden desires, see? It's like they need the bomb. The bomb gives their lives meaning, like a new religion, and now they've gone to meet God." So upon realizing that they need to go to the airbase, John decides that he needs a car so he can drive over to the airbase and stop what's going on. And Una decides to stay with the kids there because she can't leave the kids by themselves. So she stays in the disco with the kids. But before she goes back there, she makes sure that she gives John a tape to play inside of this truck he finds. And the truck has like a loudspeaker assembly on it, like one of those megaphones, but like 2 of them back to back. It's kind of like an ice cream truck, like it's gonna project sound. So it seems like maybe he's going to blast the music on the loudspeakers, and maybe that will wake people up as he drives by. And I thought this part was funny because in all of Hellblazer, John is famously known for not being able to drive. So I was about to be like, wait, he can drive? And even Una asks, "I didn't know you could drive." And then there's a hard cut where we go back to the airbase where the Archbishop and his followers have gotten to the area where the missiles are being kept, or at least the planes. And the Archbishop is saying, "There are angels imprisoned in these shells. Our bodies, too, are cages which contain angels." And then his followers ask, "What shall we do?" And then there's another hard cut back to Constantine and Una, where Constantine's responding to her question of, "I didn't know you could drive," where he's like, "Drive? Of course I can't." And then you just see this crazy look on his face as he's, I guess, driving away, determined to get to the airbase, but not quite knowing what he's doing. And then we cut back to the airbase where the Archbishop is telling his followers, "I must go now. I am summoned. You must break the glass, release the angelic light, and join our light with that great and final light." And he's saying that as his followers are like looking at the jets and airplanes that are inside of the airbase. And then we follow the Archbishop, who's walking down what looks like the landing strip of this airbase, and he's saying, "The old gods wear new faces. They dress in new clothes that they may walk among us unseen. But underneath the mask, the face is always the same. Azrael, Death God, Death Angel, I recognize you. I know you." And he says that as he approaches a jet fighter that is on the runway. And as that's going on, we cut to John, who is now getting to the airbase with his van that is blasting music out of the loudspeakers. And his plan does work, because as he gets into the hangar where all the followers are trying to break into, I guess these are bombs. I don't know. They look like planes to me, but I guess maybe they're missiles, or I don't know. They got little wings, and they also have like jet engines on them. So maybe there's some kind of missile or something. But either way, they're breaking into these weapons, and as they are, they hear John's music being blasted from the van. And I don't know what the song is. I'm sure it's quoting the actual lyrics from some song that Grant Morrison likes. So John pulls his van into the hangar, still blasting the music, and he yells out, "Don't touch anything! Don't anyone touch anything!" And the music that's blaring is obviously working, because all of a sudden, all the followers kind of have crazy looks on their faces of realization, and they're like, "Oh God, what are we doing here?" And then John grabs a guy from the shoulders and shakes him and says, "You just about blew up the north end of England, you stupid bastards! The missiles, did you touch them?" And the guy he's shaking says, "I didn't, honest. Oh, Jesus. Oh, dear God, I didn't." And then he's like hit by a realization as he's saying that to John. And then he kind of walks away from John and says, "Parson Bayless, he went over there where the planes are." And then John's like, "Oh no, nobody move. Don't touch anything." And he begins to run. And then as he's running, he hears a jet begin to take off, and he yells, "Stop! For God's sake, stop!" But it's too late. The jet flies into the sky, and John says to himself, "Shit." So as the plane takes off, we cut to inside the cockpit, where Parson Bayless apparently has woken up, maybe from the sound of the jet. I'm not sure why, but he kind of becomes aware, just like the people in the hangar, and he's like, "What? Why am I here? Am I dreaming? Did I wake?" And then he sees, as he looks out, no, he's in a fucking cockpit of a plane, and they're flying, and it's not just a plane, it's a jet. So somehow in his like possession, he was able to start this jet up and take it off, and now he's in mid-flight, and he's flying over the town. And I'm assuming because he woke up that it's just crashing now, because we see that it's, the town isn't far away from this airbase. So it seems like it just took off, and then he woke up as it took off, and now he's about to crash into the town because it's close enough by that once it's in the air, it's just going to crash down if no one's flying into this town. So as he's coming to, he's still talking. He's saying, "Christ leaks away down into darkness, falling. No, not darkness, light, such a light, nearer my God to thee." So it's like he came out of it, and then he got possessed again or something. And then we see his face and body becoming enveloped by a bright white light. Then we cut back to Una, who is with the kids inside of the disco, and she's just kind of comforting them as they're saying like, "Oh, I want to go home. I don't like it here." So as she's trying to calm them, all of a sudden, all the power turns off. So the lights and the music stop, and Una's like, "Oh God, they've cut the power." And as she says that, the doors burst open, and people with torches and masks come in, and they're yelling, "Bad, bad, bad girl." So they grab her and they take her out, and she's yelling, "Let me go. What are you going to? Oh no." And she says that because as they pull her out the door, we see that there's like a car that has been filled with coal, is what it says, because the people are saying, "We mined here once, coal, quarrying light from the darkness. Now you become light, an offering to the God of dawn, burning in the flowery death car. Soon it will be dawn, when all the masks are cast aside and we stand before the coming God." And then Una yells out, "John, where are you? John, they're going to burn me, John." And then there's some narration that says, "The sky becomes paper thin, dawn light in a paper lantern. The god is coming in a thunder of wings. And then the possessed followers that are trying to burn her say, look, he's coming. 3 stars in the sky. 3 stars of warning. He's coming. And what they're pointing to is the jet that Parson Bayless is flying and is about to crash into the town. And that is exactly what happens. The plane crashes and the bombs explode. And then we cut to some time afterwards. They don't give us an exact time of how long it's been, but the rubble is still smoking of the town of Thursdyke. So we get a news reporter that is on site saying, the tragedy of what has happened here in Thursdyke cannot be underestimated. As emergency services work to clear the wreckage, no clear picture has yet emerged as to the final death toll. That the tragedy should have occurred during a festival of civic regeneration makes it all the more horrific. The Prime Minister, who heard the news early this morning, is currently on her way to Thursdyke to offer her sympathy and support. Police have already revealed that a radical anti-nuclear group may have been responsible for the... And then it cuts off, and then Constantine is in the background and he's saying, yeah, that's right, mate. Feed him all the old lies. You've got a posh accent, so it must be true. And him saying that out loud is actually like interrupting the recording of the future broadcast. So the news reporter is like, what? And he turns around and sees Constantine walking away, and he's just very perturbed. And he's like, cut, start that again. Bloody pain in the arse. And then we get some narration as John Constantine walks away, and it says, do you believe a town can commit suicide, she said. The town was never alive. It died years ago, and what we have seen is no more than a haunting. A unique spirit tricked into living colors. Those lights, those voices, echoes at a seance. A painted sheet drawn over a corpse. A mask. And now the mask is cast away. And as this narration is happening, John is kind of walking through the rubble of the town. And I guess these weren't nuclear missiles because there doesn't seem to be any fallout even though the town was blown up or whatever. There's no like nuclear radiation or anything. So John is poking around in the ashes and stuff, and he finds Una's camera, and he kind of looks at it sadly and throws it back on the ground and then walks away from the town and just says, bollocks. And then he walks back to the crossroads that he was dropped off at the beginning of last issue. And it turns out he gets picked up by the same guy who dropped him off here in the first place. So that guy stops and he says, well, here's a coincidence, eh? Nice to see you again, pal. So where are you headed this time? London, is it? And then John, who's, all sad from everything that just happened, is like, that's right. All the way down, mate. All the way down. And that's how it ends. So it seems like that driver was a little too chipper for what just happened about a mile away of a town being blown up by some kind of terrorist attack. But this is the 80s and he's a trucker, so maybe he's not up to date on, the latest news and everything. I don't know. Who knows? But so if you guys have any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can email me at planestransandcomicbooks, all one word, @gmail.com, and we will see you on the next one.